Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Simple English Talks. I'm so happy you're here with us today, and I really mean that. Every time we record, I look forward to spending this time with you. Whether you're listening while commuting, cooking, or just relaxing at home, we're glad you chose us for your English practice today.
Hey there, wonderful listeners. It's so great to be here with you all again. I have to say, today's topic is one that I personally feel very strongly about because it's something I've heard from so many English learners over the years. I know you're going to connect with this one.
You know, just before we started recording, we were actually talking about this exact topic, and we both had so much to say. It's one of those conversations that just kept going and going. I think that tells you how important and how real this problem is for learners.
So here's today's big topic, and I want you to really think about this as I say it. Have you ever watched an English movie, understood most of it, and then tried to speak English with someone and suddenly felt completely frozen? That is exactly what we're talking about today.
By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why this happens, and more importantly, you're going to have some real, practical tools to start breaking through that wall. We're going to explain the science behind it in simple terms and give you things you can actually do today.
And here's our first question for you. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Do you understand English well but struggle to speak it? Tell us your experience. Write, "Yes, that's me," in the comments right now if this happens to you. We read every single comment.
And while you're down there, please make sure you like this episode and subscribe to Simple English Talks so you never miss a new episode. We put out new content regularly, and every episode is designed specifically to help you improve your English step by step.
All right, let's dive in and figure out this mystery together. Because once you understand why this happens, everything is going to start making a lot more sense.
Okay, so let's start with the most important idea in today's episode. There is actually a very well-known concept in language learning, and it explains exactly what's happening when you can understand English but can't speak it. Language experts call this the difference between receptive skills and productive skills. But don't worry, we're going to explain those words very clearly.
Yes, so let me break this down. Receptive skills mean the skills you use to receive language. That means listening and reading. When you listen to a podcast, watch a show, or read a book, you are using your receptive skills. And here's the thing, your brain gets a lot of practice with these skills, especially if you consume a lot of English media.
And productive skills are the opposite. They mean the skills you use to produce language. That means speaking and writing. To produce language, your brain has to do a completely different job. It's not enough to recognize a word. Your brain has to actually find that word, put it in the right order, make the right sounds, and do all of this in real time while another person is waiting for you. That is a lot of pressure.
Think about it this way. Imagine you've watched a professional chef cook a beautiful meal on television many, many times. You know the steps, you've seen the ingredients, you understand the process. But then someone hands you a pan and says, "Okay, now you do it." Suddenly it feels completely different, right? That's because watching and doing are two very different skills.
Exactly. And this is so important because many learners feel something is wrong with them when this happens. They think, "I'm stupid," or "I just don't have talent for languages." But that's completely not true. The real reason is much simpler. You've been training your receptive skills, but not your productive skills nearly as much. It's not about talent at all.
So let me give you some very concrete examples of what this looks like. You hear someone say, "I've been thinking about you," and you understand it perfectly. But when you want to say something similar, you freeze. Should it be "I think," or "I'm thinking," or "I thought"? You know the meaning, but you can't quickly choose the right form. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Write in the comments if you've experienced this.
Or here's another one. You're watching a TV show and a character says something funny, and you laugh because you got the joke. But then your friend asks you to explain the joke in English, and suddenly you can't find the words. The understanding was there, but the production just wouldn't come out. That's the gap we're talking about.
And there's actually a reason for this gap in how our brains work. When we listen, our brain matches what we hear to patterns we already know. You know what it means when you see or hear it. But for speaking, that same word also needs to be stored in your speaking box, meaning you can pull it out quickly and use it naturally. Many learners fill the understanding box, but don't practice filling the speaking box. So what's the takeaway from this section? First, it is completely normal to understand more than you can speak. Second, understanding and speaking are genuinely different skills that need separate practice. And third, the solution is not to study more vocabulary lists. The solution is to start training your speaking muscle, just like you train any other muscle. We'll talk more about how to do that very soon.
Building on what we just talked about, I want to go a little deeper into something that surprises a lot of learners. You might think, okay, if I just watch enough English movies and listen to enough podcasts, eventually my speaking will come naturally. And I completely understand why you'd think that. It sounds logical. But the research actually tells us something a bit different.
Right. And this is something I wish someone had told me much earlier in my own language learning journey. Listening and reading, what we call input, are incredibly valuable. They build your vocabulary, your sense of grammar, your understanding of how the language sounds and flows. We absolutely need input. But input alone doesn't automatically create speaking ability.
Here's a really interesting example. There are people who have lived in a foreign country for 10 or even 20 years, hearing the language every single day, and they still struggle to speak fluently. How is that possible? Well, it's because they were surrounded by the language, but they weren't being forced to produce it. They could get by with gestures, simple phrases, or just nodding along. The brain is actually very efficient. It only develops what it needs to use.
That's such a good point. The brain learns by doing. So if you want to speak, you have to speak, even badly, even imperfectly, even when it's uncomfortable. Let me give you 3 specific reasons why output, meaning speaking and writing, is so important alongside your listening practice.
Go ahead. I think our listeners are really going to find this helpful.
Okay, first, speaking forces you to notice gaps. When you try to say something and you can't, your brain suddenly becomes very aware that something is missing. That awareness is actually powerful. It makes you much more likely to notice and remember that language the next time you encounter it. So struggling to speak isn't a sign of failure. It's actually your brain learning.
Oh, I love that reframe. It's so encouraging to think of it that way. What's the second reason?
Second, speaking builds automatic access to language. When you practice saying something out loud over and over, it becomes easier and faster to retrieve. Think about how you know your own phone number. You don't have to think about it, it just comes out. That's the kind of automatic access we want to build with common English phrases and expressions. Repetition and practice build that automaticity.
And the third one?
Third, speaking gives you real feedback. When you're silent and just listening, you don't find out what you don't know. But when you speak, you discover exactly where your gaps are. And that feedback, even if it's just you noticing your own mistakes, is really powerful for learning. So speaking is not just the goal of language learning, it's also one of the best ways to improve.
Okay, so here's a quick practice activity I want you to try right now, wherever you are. I want you to pause this podcast and try to answer this question out loud in English. What did you do yesterday? Just try it. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Just speak. 3 sentences is enough. Go ahead and pause and try it. We'll be right here when you come back.
Welcome back. How was that? Did you try it? Write in the comments what you said, even just one sentence from your answer. We want to read your English. This is important because commenting in English is also a form of output practice. Every sentence you produce, even in writing, helps build that speaking connection in your brain.
And here's a key tip. Don't wait until your English is perfect to start speaking. If you wait for perfect, you will wait forever. Start speaking with the English you have right now. Speak slowly, use simple words, and focus on communicating your meaning. That's all that matters in real conversation.
To review what we just covered, listening and reading build your understanding, but speaking practice builds your ability to speak. These are connected but different. Input is necessary but not sufficient. And output, actually speaking and writing, is what bridges the gap between understanding and speaking. Now let's look at one more key piece of this puzzle.
All right, so we've talked about the difference between understanding and speaking, and we've talked about why you need to practice output. But there's one more huge piece of this puzzle that we haven't discussed yet. And honestly, I think for many learners, this is the biggest one. It's fear. The fear of speaking English is real. It's very common, and it has a massive impact on your ability to speak.
Oh yes, this is so true and so important. I've heard from so many learners who say, I know the words, I know the grammar, but when I open my mouth, everything just disappears. And that feeling of your mind going blank, that's not a language problem. That's an anxiety response. Your nervous system is treating the situation like a threat, and it makes your brain freeze up.
Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're in a meeting, or at a shop, or talking to a native speaker at a party. You want to say something. You know roughly what you want to say, but suddenly you become very aware that everyone might be listening and judging. And in that moment, poof, the words are gone. Your heart beats faster. You feel embarrassed before you've even made a mistake. Does that sound familiar? Tell us in the comments if you felt this way.
And here's something really important to understand about that moment. Your brain isn't broken. In fact, what's happening is completely natural. When we feel anxious or threatened, a part of our brain called the amygdala becomes very active, and it actually reduces our ability to access complex language. This is why even native speakers sometimes stumble over their words when they're nervous, because stress and language production genuinely don't mix well.
So what can we do about it? Here are some really practical tips that I personally have found helpful, and I want you to try these. First, lower the stakes of your speaking practice. Don't start by trying to have a deep conversation with a native speaker if that terrifies you. Start by talking to yourself. Yes, out loud to yourself. Describe what you see around you. Narrate what you're doing. Practice telling a simple story while you're walking or driving. There's zero judgment, and you're still training your speaking muscle.
Second, use a technique called chunking. Instead of trying to build sentences word by word from scratch every time, learn and memorize whole phrases as units. For example, instead of trying to construct, I was wondering if you could help me every time you need it, just memorize and practice that whole chunk until it feels natural. Real conversation is actually built on lots of these chunks, not perfect grammar from scratch every time.
That's such good advice. Third, practice speaking English when the stakes are very low. Join online communities. Speak in the comment section of videos. Record yourself and listen back. The goal is to get your brain used to the act of producing English so that it becomes more familiar and less frightening over time. Familiarity really does reduce fear.
And here's something I really want you to hear because I think it matters a lot. Native speakers do not expect you to be perfect. Most people are actually very patient and very kind when they know someone is speaking in their second or third language. They are impressed, not critical. So the judgmental audience you imagine? In most cases, it doesn't exist. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Imperfect speaking that happens is infinitely more valuable than perfect speaking that never comes out.
Let's do a quick mini practice right now. I'm going to say something, and I want you to respond out loud. Ready? What's your favorite thing to do on weekends? Say your answer out loud right now. I'll wait. Say it slowly if you need to. Use simple words. Just answer the question.
Excellent. Whether you said one sentence or five, you just practiced productive English. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Small moments of actual speaking practice, done regularly, build real confidence over time. Your speaking improves one brave moment at a time. Now let's talk about the mistakes people make when trying to fix this problem.
Okay, this is one of my favorite sections, talking about common mistakes. And I want to be honest, I've made most of these mistakes myself when I was learning languages. So please don't feel embarrassed if you recognize yourself in any of these. They are extremely common, and the fact that you're here listening right now means you're already doing something different.
Mistake number one, and this is a big one, is what I call passive practice addiction. This is when a learner spends hours and hours watching English videos, listening to English podcasts, reading English articles, and calls this studying English. Now, all of that is genuinely helpful, but if you never produce any English yourself, never speak, never write, never respond out loud,